I never thought I'd find myself in a spot like this, but there I was, staring at the only bed in the room, my heart pounding like a drum solo. The storm outside was raging, like some kind of wild beast, shaking the windows of my sister's cabin out in the woods. We'd all come out here for a family getaway, but things took a weird turn, and now it was just me and my 21-year-old nephew Jake, stuck here for the night. Everyone else had split earlier to grab supplies, but the storm hit before we could follow, leaving us stranded. Jake, with his smooth grin and laid-back vibe, tried to play it cool. "Aunt Lisa, it's just a bed. I promise I'll stick to my side," he said, trying to be reassuring, but the smirk on his face hinted at something else, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. I hesitated, clutching the blanket I'd planned to take to the couch. "Jake, it's not about that. It's just weird." He shrugged, running a hand through his messy dark hair. "Suit yourself. But with the power out, it's freezing in here. You'll be more comfortable in the bed." The room was dead silent, except for the occasional crackle of the fire and the howling wind. I didn't want to admit he was right, but the thought of shivering on the couch all night wasn't exactly appealing. Reluctantly, I dropped the blanket and sat on the edge of the bed. "Fine," I muttered, my voice barely audible over the storm. "But stay on your side, Jake. I mean it." He chuckled softly, but there was a playful edge to it. "Of course, Aunt Lisa. I wouldn't dream of crossing the line." I turned my back to him, trying to ignore the warmth of his presence. As we both settled into the bed, the storm outside felt like a reflection of the chaos inside me. A mix of unease, curiosity, and something I didn't want to name. As the minutes stretched into an hour, I felt myself relaxing, despite my earlier apprehensions. "Ion." That's when it happened, a light touch on my arm. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Was it an accident? Had he turned in his sleep? I couldn't bring myself to look, the tension in the room thick enough to cut with a knife. Before I could decide what to do, Jake's voice broke the silence, low and steady. "Lisa, can I tell you something?" I turned slightly, meeting his gaze in the dim light of the fire. His usual playful expression was gone, replaced by something more serious, more intense. My heart raced as 1,000 questions swirled in my mind, but I managed to whisper, "What is it?" He hesitated, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed. "You're not like anyone I've ever known. There's something about you. Something I can't explain." The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Every instinct told me to shut this down, to stop whatever was about to happen. But I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. Then he leaned closer. "What would you do in Lisa's situation? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for the next part of the story." I jerked back instinctively, my heart pounding in my chest. "Jake!" I said sharply, my voice trembling. "What are you doing?" He froze, his hand halfway between us. His expression was caught somewhere between regret and determination. "I'm sorry, Lisa," he said, his voice low and barely audible over the storm. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. I don't know how to explain it. You're different. I don't see you the way I should." A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold air in the room. The weight of his words hung in the space between us, heavy and unspoken for too long. I searched his face for some sign of mischief, some hint that this was one of his usual jokes, but what I saw was something else entirely. Earnestness. "Jake, stop," I said firmly, sitting up now, trying to regain control of the moment. "You're my nephew. Whatever you're thinking, it's not right." "I know," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I've tried to ignore it, I swear I have. But being here alone with you, it's like I can't pretend anymore." I felt my breath hitch, a strange mix of emotions swirling inside me: anger, confusion, and something darker I couldn't name. His vulnerability was unsettling, breaking through the usual image of the carefree young man I had always known. "Jake," I said, softer this time, hoping to diffuse the situation. "You're tired, it's late, and we're both stuck here in this strange situation. Just let's forget this, okay? Get some sleep. Things will feel different in the morning." He nodded, but his eyes lingered on me a moment longer than they should have. "You're probably right," he said, finally lying back against the pillow. I turned away, clutching the blanket tightly around me. My mind raced with what had just happened, replaying his words, his tone, the look in his eyes. I told myself it was over, that he'd come to his senses, but my instincts told me otherwise. The tension in the room was palpable, and even with my back to him, I could feel the weight of his gaze. Minutes passed, and just as I felt myself beginning to drift off, I heard him whisper, "Lisa." I didn't respond, hoping he'd think I was asleep. But then I felt the bed shift, his presence drawing closer. "Jake," I said, my voice sharper now, "go back to your side." "I can't," he replied, his voice strained. "Not until I know if you feel it too." "Do you think Lisa should confront Jake more directly or leave the situation? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for the next part of the story. I sat up abruptly, my chest heaving with the weight of the moment. "Jake, this has to stop," I said, my voice firmer than I thought it could be. "You don't know what you're saying. This isn't right." He reached out but stopped short of touching me, his hand hovering in the space between us. "I know how it sounds, Lisa, but I'm not a kid anymore. I know what I feel, and I know you feel it too, even if you won't admit it." His words hit me like a jolt, and I felt a strange mix of anger and disbelief surge through me. "You're out of your mind," I snapped, swinging my legs over the side of the bed. I needed distance, clarity, anything to pull me out of this nightmare. But before I could stand, Jake grabbed my wrist, not forcefully, but enough to stop me. "Wait," he pleaded, his voice breaking. "Just let me say this, please." I froze, torn between pulling away and hearing him out. The storm outside roared louder, as if nature itself was reflecting the chaos inside the room. "Fine," I said through gritted teeth. "Say what you need to say, and then leave me alone." He let go of my wrist and ran a hand through his hair, his face a mix of frustration and desperation. "I've always admired you," he began. "Not just because of how you look, but because of who you are. You're smart, kind, strong. Everything I've ever wanted to be around." "That's called respect," I interjected coldly. "Not whatever this is." He shook his head. "It's more than that, Lisa. I've tried to ignore it, to push it down. But the more I'm around you, the harder it gets. And now, being here, just the two of us." "You're crossing a line," I said, standing up now. "And you know it." He stood too, his eyes locking with mine. "I know," he admitted. "But I can't help how I feel, and I think you feel it too. You're just too afraid to say it." The audacity of his words made my blood boil. "Afraid?" I said, my voice rising. "Afraid of what? Of ruining my life because you've decided to confuse your feelings?" The room fell silent, except for the storm raging outside. He took a step back, his shoulders slumping, as if my words had finally broken through. For a moment, I thought it was over, that he would finally see reason. But then he said something that sent a chill down my spine. "If you're so sure you don't feel anything," he said, his voice steady now, "then why haven't you walked out of this room? What do you think Lisa should do next? Should she leave the room or confront Jake further?" Let me know in the comments and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for the next chapter. I clenched my fists, his question reverberating in my mind like an accusation I didn't want to face. You think this is some kind of game? I shot back, my voice trembling with anger. You've crossed every boundary, Jake, and now you're trying to twist this into something it's not. His eyes softened, but there was an intensity in them that made it impossible to look away. It's not a game, he said quietly. I just need to know if I'm completely insane for feeling this way, or if there's even the smallest part of you that understands. I turned toward the window, the relentless rain pounding against the glass like a drumbeat to my racing heart. What you're feeling isn't love, or anything close to it, I said, my voice calmer but still firm. It's confusion, maybe loneliness, but it's not real, Jake. It can't be. I felt him move closer, the heat of his presence making my skin prickle. And what if it is? He whispered. I spun around to face him, my frustration boiling over. Stop, just stop, I shouted, the force of my words startling even me. You have no idea what you're saying, and you don't understand the damage this could cause. You need to let this go before it destroys both of us. He stepped back, the fight in his posture crumbling into something that looked like defeat. I'm sorry, he said, his voice barely audible. I never wanted to hurt you or make things harder. I thought I needed to tell you the truth. I nodded, relief washing over me as he finally seemed to grasp the gravity of the situation. Honesty's good, Jake, I said, my tone softening. But now you need to respect me and yourself enough to move on from this. Do you understand? He hesitated before nodding, his eyes filled with a mixture of regret and something else I couldn't quite place. I'll try, he said. I stepped back, creating space between us as I reached for the door. Good, I said firmly. I think we both need some time to think. Just as I turned the knob, his voice stopped me. Lisa, he said, his tone heavier now. Before you go, just answer one thing. I paused, but didn't turn around. What is it? If I hadn't said anything, would you have ever admitted that you feel it too? Do you think Lisa's reaction is enough to put an end to Jake's feelings? Or is this just the calm before another storm? Share your thoughts in the comments and stay tuned for the next chapter. I froze at the door, his question slicing through me like a blade. My hand tightened around the knob, and for a moment, I didn't know if I had the strength to answer him, or if I even wanted to. Jake, I began, my voice low, almost trembling. What you're asking, it doesn't matter, because the answer changes nothing. I turned to look at him, his expression unreadable, a storm of emotions flickering across his face. It matters to me, he said, his voice calm but insistent. Because if there's even a shred of truth to it, then I'm not crazy for feeling what I feel. You're not crazy, I said, letting out a shaky breath. But you're wrong about this, about us. And no matter what you think, I won't let this go any further. His jaw tightened, and for a moment I thought he might argue again, but instead he simply nodded. I get it, he said softly. I pushed too far, I won't do it again. Relief washed over me, but it was tainted by an undercurrent of unease. His words sounded sincere, but the weight in his gaze told a different story. Good, I replied, stepping out of the room. As I closed the door behind me, I leaned against the wall, my chest heaving as if I'd run a marathon. I needed to clear my head, to make sense of the whirlwind of emotions that had just unfolded. But before I could even take a step, I heard a faint sound, a drawer opening. My pulse quickened as I realized it came from inside the room I just left. I pushed the door open slightly, peering inside. Jake stood by the nightstand, his back to me. In his hand was a small folded piece of paper. "What are you doing?" I demanded, my voice sharper than I intended. He spun around, his face pale as he shoved the paper into his pocket. Nothing, he said quickly, too quickly. What's in your pocket? I asked, stepping into the room again. It's nothing, he insisted, backing away slightly. I reached out my hand, trembling as I pointed to his pocket. Show me, I said firmly. He hesitated, his eyes darting between me and the door, as if weighing his options. Then slowly he pulled the paper out and handed it to me. Unfolding it, I felt my breath catch in my throat. It wasn't just any piece of paper. It was a letter I'd written years ago but never intended for anyone to see. How did you get this? I stammered, my hands shaking as I held the paper. I found it, he admitted quietly. I didn't mean to invade your privacy, but it explained so much. My heart pounded as I read the familiar words I'd written in a moment of vulnerability, words that now felt like a betrayal of my own thoughts. This was private, I said, my voice breaking. You had no right. I know, he said, his eyes filled with regret. But when I read it, I realized I wasn't the only one feeling conflicted. What do you think was in Lisa's letter? Could this revelation change everything between them? Share your theories in the comments and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for the final chapter. Jake's confession hung heavy in the air, the silence between us almost unbearable. My hands trembled as I clutched the letter, its edges crumbling under the weight of my grip. You shouldn't have read this, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I know, he admitted, stepping closer, his gaze steady but filled with remorse. But I couldn't stop myself. I needed to understand why we felt this way. There is no we, Jake, I said sharply, cutting him off. Whatever you think this is, it's not real. It's just a phase, confusion, something that will pass. His expression hardened. The vulnerability I'd seen moments ago replaced by something far more determined. You don't believe that, he said firmly. You're just scared to admit it. Scared? I let out a bitter laugh, though my chest felt tight. You have no idea what you're talking about. Don't I? He countered, his voice rising slightly. You wrote in that letter how lonely you've been, how no one understands you, how you've always felt like you're carrying the weight of the world alone. Stop, I say, my voice trembling now. You said you just wanted someone to see you. He continued, his tone softer, but no less intense. To really see you for who you are. I see you, Lisa. The way he said my name sent a shiver down my spine. It was filled with so much certainty, so much raw emotion, that I couldn't look at him. Instead, I turned away, my heart racing as I struggled to compose myself. This isn't right, I managed to say, my voice breaking. Whatever you think you feel, it doesn't matter. I'm your aunt, Jake. He stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. And yet here we are. I felt the heat of his presence behind me, his proximity both terrifying and magnetic. Don't, I said, my words almost a plea. But then he pulled back, giving me space. I'm not trying to hurt you, he said softly. I just needed you to know the truth. Whatever happens next, it's up to you. The vulnerability in his voice made my chest ache, but I couldn't let myself give in without another word. I turned and left the room, my legs shaky. As I made my way to the kitchen, I stood by the sink, gripping the counter for support as my mind raced. The letter, his words, the way he looked at me, it was all too much. But before I could even catch my breath, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, expecting Jake, but instead it was my sister, his mother, standing in the doorway. Her expression was unreadable. Is everything okay? She asked, her tone cautious. I hesitated, my heart pounding. Did she know? Could she tell something had changed between us? Yes, I lied, forcing a smile. Just tired. It's been a long day. She nodded slowly, her gaze lingering on me for a moment before she turned to grab a glass of water. But as she did, she glanced down at the crumpled letter, still in my hand. "What's that?" she asked, her voice sharp. My stomach dropped as I quickly stuffed the letter into my pocket. "Nothing," I said too quickly. Her eyes narrowed, suspicion creeping into her expression. "It doesn't look like nothing," she said, stepping closer. "It's private," I said firmly, my voice steadier than I felt. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and for a moment, I thought she might push further. But then she sighed and shook her head. "Fine. Keep your secrets. But remember, Lisa, secrets have a way of coming out, whether you want them to or not." Her words lingered long after she'd left the room, a chilling reminder of how fragile the line I was walking truly was. What would you do if you were in Lisa's shoes? Should she confront the truth or bury it forever? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping stories like this.